Did you know that in 2007, a TV sitcom aired on ABC called Cavemen, which was inspired by a series of GEICO commercials? It turned one of the most popular advertising campaigns in history into a short-lived, oft-forgotten, and controversial piece of TV that has been cited numerous times as one of the worst television shows of all time. And did you know that Eric Andre, yes, that Eric Andre, was once a GEICO caveman? And did you know that there was once an interactive website called Caveman's Crib where millions of users explored the world of the GEICO cavemen? Caveman's Crib has since become lost media, with only a single video on YouTube suggesting what it once was like thanks to a broken Wayback Machine. Will we uncover this lost media in our investigation today? Well, stick around and find out, because today we're taking a deep dive into the world of the GEICO Cavemen, one of the most iconic commercials in history that for many may have fallen into the memory hole, and uncover everything there is to know about these prehistoric pitchmen.
And everywhere I go, there's always something to remind me of another place and time.
So where's the best place to start our journey? Well, I think that's easy. The beginning. The GEICO Cavemen were created in 2004 by the US-based Martin Agency for a new series of TV commercials. The Martin Agency had been responsible for American auto insurance company GEICO's advertising for years, and they're also the minds behind the GEICO Gecko, which has since become the company's only official mascot. The agency has one guiding principle for their GEICO advertising: laughter is almost as universal as lack of interest in car insurance. And so they always sought to make their commercials about the terribly dull and aggravating topic of car insurance as entertaining as possible. I assume they thought of their spots more as little comedy shorts than simply commercials. That's why the GEICO Cavemen were conceived by copywriters Noel Ritter and Joe Lawson in 2004. The premise of these new commercials was pretty simple. GEICO's new catchphrase is, "It's so easy to use GEICO.com, a caveman could do it." This is incredibly insulting to modern-day cavemen who, much to the surprise of both GEICO and the audience, are still around. Not only that, to further subvert the viewers' expectations, the cavemen are less BC and more bohemian bourgeoisie, enjoying snobbish pastimes like classical piano and fine dining. The commercials are an excellent visual gag, genuinely funny, and the actors deliver some pretty amazing and nuanced performances for a 30-second spot. The campaign started off as a trilogy of interconnected TV spots titled Boom Mic, Apartment, and Apology.
It's so easy to use GEICO.com, a caveman could do it.
What?
Oh, no,
Not cool.
I did not know you were there. I can change.
GEICO. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
It's so easy to use GEICO.com, a caveman could do it.
What's that supposed to mean? Did you hear that?
That is really condescending.
GEICO. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
At GEICO.com, you can handle all your car insurance needs online. It's so easy, a caveman could do it.
Seriously, we apologize. We had no idea you guys were still around.
Yeah, next time maybe do a little research.
Gentlemen, are we ready to order?
I'll have the roast duck with the mango salsa.
I don't have much of an appetite, thank you.
GEICO. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
The GEICO Caveman ads were an instant hit, and a fourth commercial was ordered. Arguably one of the most memorable ads of the entire campaign, in this spot we find a caveman on a moving sidewalk at an airport who is evidently shocked to discover that GEICO is still using their stereotypical and offensive portrayal of a caveman in their advertising. The ad is set to the song Remind Me by Norwegian electronic music duo Røyksopp. I'm sure that this commercial served as the gateway to Røyksopp's music for many of their American fans.
Seriously, 4 feet by 5 feet. Well, apparently not, because I'm looking right at it.
The next spot in the campaign is titled Therapy, and in it we see a caveman talking to his therapist about the new GEICO catchphrase.
Why does that bother you?
Why does it bother me? So easy a caveman can do it?
Well, it's just a commercial.
Okay. Well, what if it said GEICO.com, so easy a therapist can do it?
Well, that commercial wouldn't make sense to me.
Why not?
Well, therapists
Are what? Smart? My mother's calling. I'll put it on speaker.
GEICO. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
The actor who played the caveman in Therapy, playing opposite to Talia Shire from The Godfather, is named John Lehr. He's actually the same actor who played the disgruntled boom-op in the very first spot in the campaign. I actually got the amazing opportunity to sit down with John and talk about his experience as the very first GEICO Caveman. You will quickly notice that John looks completely unrecognizable from his caveman counterpart out of makeup, but his voice should sound very familiar.
My name is John Lehr, and I played Caveman, one of the cavemen. There were three of us at the top, but I'm one of the three original GEICO Cavemen.
So now that I had this opportunity to sit down and talk with the original GEICO Caveman, the first thing I wanted to know was, how did he even get that role? Like, what was that audition like?
Commercial auditions are kind of weird. It's like it's a numbers game. You just do a bunch of them hoping you'll snag one. What I didn't know is that the directors who were casting it, I knew them. I had shot a short film with them, and they had seen me perform. We were, in each other's sphere. And so I didn't know that, though, at the time. I just got an audition that said Caveman. I remember getting the sides and looking at it and being, Caveman, what? But, with commercials, there's all kinds of weird stuff. So it didn't strike me as particularly weird in any way. I thought it was kind of clever. I only had a chance to digest it in just a few minutes, but the idea of him being kind of metrosexual, and I liked that. And they let me improvise. And that's my whole thing is that's where I come from. And so whenever I'm allowed to do that, I'm like, yay. And so I just started improvising. And I think that's what ended up probably sealing the deal for me, I guess, in the end, was that, and a lot of in fact, all of the spots that I did had some element of me improvising in them. And a lot of the lines they end up using were lines that I had improvised. And that's what made it really fun for me.
Don't worry about those guys.
I am just so sick of this.
Dude, what do you expect? You went with GEICO.com. What, to save some money?
It's my life, okay?
Just a little loyalty would be nice, that's all.
What? Having GEICO makes me less of a caveman?
Tina's here. We're getting back together. Hey,
Give us a minute.
It's pretty apparent that there was a lot of improv in these commercials. Many consider the line from Apology, where the caveman asks for roast duck, as a jab at Aflac, a rival insurance company whose mascot was, and still is, a duck, famously voiced by the late comedian Gilbert Gottfried. However, that line was actually improvised by fellow actor Ben Weber, so unless Ben had some unnatural loyalty towards GEICO or a beef with Aflac, chances are it doesn't run quite that deep. Now, of course, what would the GEICO Cavemen be without their makeup? The special effects makeup, prosthetics, and fake hair glued to the skin of these actors is what made the cavemen truly come to life. The special effects makeup on the commercial campaign was done by Alterian Inc., a Los Angeles-based studio helmed by Tony Gardner, who has previously worked on some classic horror films, including The Return of the Living Dead, Army of Darkness, The Blob remake, and The Craft. Clearly, it took some very skilled artists to turn a photogenic actor like John Lehr into a caveman. I was very curious to learn what this process was like from the actor's perspective. It's easy to forget when you're watching these commercials that there are actual Homo sapiens behind all of those prosthetics, and they don't just wake up looking like that. So, what was that like?
It was intense. And before they even started, I had to go down to their studios, and they did a mold of my face where they pour goop over your head, and you have two straws sticking out of your nostrils to breathe out of, and you kind of have to hold still, and it's very, very claustrophobic. Lots of people really freak out over that. And I didn't have a problem with that. They they poured goo into my mouth to get a mold of my mouth for my teeth, for the teeth. And that I remember being like, ugh, because it went down my throat a little bit. And that part I remember being kind of weirded out by. But so that was to make all the pieces so that they could have a version of me that they could work on so everything would fit perfectly. The makeup is, it's weird. It's like human beings don't like stuff glued to their face, it turns out. And I didn't know any of this going in, but apparently there are people who can handle it and people who can't. And there are lots of famous examples of movie stars who were not able to deal with it, and I get why that is. It's kind of a little bit of a mind torture, you know. You kind of have to go find an inner. It sounds like, what, really? Why would that be a big deal? And I can't explain it, but just after, like, I was good for about 8 hours. But after 8 hours, man, I just wanted that stuff off, and it took everything for me not to complain about it so that I could keep working. And you know, you just kind of had to go. You couldn't really eat. And anyway, it was just uncomfortable. And then if my arms or legs were showing, they had to, like, I did a spot with Billie Jean King where I had tight short shorts on. So they had to do hair all the way up my legs. And by far, the hair was the hardest thing to deal with. It was just that was the thing that kind of tickled you. It was kind of like a torture, like water, you know, it was just slow torture. It was just like, I can't explain it. It was just, the hair was the hardest thing to deal with. Yeah. And then once they had all the hair on, then lots of detail. And then throughout the day, anytime I wasn't shooting, they would sit me down and constantly be touching it up, constantly re-gluing, constantly doing stuff. So yeah, you know, it paid amazing, and it's better than a real job. But I think to some extent we earned our money just by trying to be funny and being incredibly uncomfortable at the same time is you know, a bit of a trick.
That is fascinating. You know, I didn't think that the easiest way to describe it would be mind torture, but after thinking about having prosthetics glued to my face for 14 hours straight, yeah, that sounds about right.
The guys on the TV show had it much worse because they had 14-hour days every day. And we would do it for 3 days in a row at tops, and then we'd be done, and then it'd be a few weeks until the next one. But these guys every single day, and I don't know how they did it.
You know, I didn't expect most of my conversation with John Lehr to consist of discussing the psychological impacts of special effects makeup and prosthetics, but that's where it went. You know, he actually told me a really interesting little anecdote about Jim Carrey not handling prosthetics very well.
Jim Carrey, he did the Grinch Who Stole Christmas. You remember that? And the makeup guys were telling me about it. He had a major breakdown and refused to be in the makeup anymore. And they had to bring in like a Navy SEAL to like help him, you know, deal with the mental side. It's weird. You would think it's nothing, but it really is a mindfuck. People just can't do it sometimes.
Not to be confused with a CIA black site, the set of GEICO Cavemen commercials were not solely places for mental torture, but also a lot of creativity and interesting ideas. Now, we already spoke about how the actors were encouraged to improvise and add their own little comedic touch to the scenes that they played, but it seems that even the president of the Martin Agency was open to creative new ideas.
The president was there and he said, John, hey, we want to do a little thing. It's a green screen thing where you just kind of dance in front of it and then we'll interview you. I did. So I danced in front of the green screen, and then the president of Martin interviewed me. And those turned into like 8 national spots. Those were the dancing caveman spots, so you know what I mean? It was just like, they were very fluid and creative and always, I don't know, they were just trying all kinds of cool ideas. It was cool to be around that.
Now, obviously, there is a reason I'm sitting here right now talking about GEICO commercials that aired over a decade ago. They were an overnight sensation. A lot of people who saw those commercials back in the day can still remember details about them all these years later. So I must ask, what was that like, being a part of something that became so popular so quickly all over the country?
I hadn't even thought about it, you know, it's just I did a commercial and it was great. And, you know, I was trying to get other work and this was much later, but I remember we did a spot where my line was, Tina and I just got back together or something, like we were at a party and I come in and I improvised, like they did like 30 takes where I just kept doing different lines at the end. We shot at the Chateau Marmont on Sunset Boulevard. But we couldn't get in there for some reason early. So they had us in a hotel across Sunset Boulevard a little bit. So we had to walk from down Sunset Boulevard, just like a couple of blocks or something. And people went nuts. It was the three of us. And we were, you know, with full makeup walking down Sunset Boulevard. And I just remember cars honking. And it was just like, I was just like, what? This is crazy. And, you know, it was weird. It was real. And then, you know, things like the Oscars or Phil Sims, I shot a few spots with Phil. And one of them, during the break in shooting, Phil turns to me and goes, hey, do you want Super Bowl tickets?
Hey, Phil! Hey!
Wow.
What the heck are you doing in Miami?
Well, I'm down here to film a Super Bowl special for my All-Iron team.
Cool!
Yeah.
What?
And I was thinking, like, okay, wait, is he in character? Like, is this, like, is he just pretending? Like, what is he say? And I'm like, really? And he goes, yeah.
I'll probably see you at the Super Bowl.
Oh, you got some tickets?
I'm in the vicinity of tickets. I am very close to saying yes to that.
Good luck.
All right, let's work it. Woo! Whoa! Did NASA design this? It's got more buttons than my Aunt Kathy's sweater. If you knew her and her sweaters, you'd probably be laughing right now. It's a pretty great reference.
I'm sure I will.
Hey, Phil! Let me throw something at you. If I drive down to the game, do you think you'd get me into the game? Maybe kick it in the booth with you and Nance?
I mean, don't take this the wrong way, but there's just not a chance. There's no way.
Okay, well, let me know.
I thought I just did.
And so he gave me 50-yard line Super Bowl tickets where the New Orleans Saints beat the Indianapolis Colts. And I brought my buddy from high school, and it was amazing. It was amazing. Like hotel, everything.
Something that I am always really curious about is how landing a role like this impacts the life and career of an actor. How did becoming a GEICO Caveman affect John Lehr?
I think the biggest impact, though, was the money, because I was able to support myself. I was finally able to, get out of debt and I got a series around the same time or just prior. And those two things allowed me to comfortably pursue my art without a day job and without freaking out, very comfortably. And I bought a house, I was able to buy a house that my kids grew up in. So it totally changed my life.
That is super interesting. It's actually very similar to the response that I got from the Slim Jim guy, Dmitry Guritzis, when I asked him how landing the role of the Slim Jim guy affected his life. It seems like landing these iconic commercial roles can be life-changing opportunities for young actors.
How can it be offensive if it's true?
Okay, first of all, I'm not 100% in love with your tone right now.
Tone aside, historically, you guys have struggled to adapt.
Yeah, right. Walking upright, discovering fire, inventing the wheel, laying the foundation for all mankind. You're right. Good point. Sorry we couldn't get that to you sooner.
Connie, your reaction?
Sounds like someone woke up on the wrong side of the rock.
The actor who played the caveman in this spot, Jeff Daniel Phillips, is the only actor to fully make the crossover from the TV commercials to the ABC sitcom, but we'll circle back to that later. Now, I'm sure you might have noticed by now that these GEICO Cavemen ads are playing around with the idea of quote-unquote political correctness, or what we would call today, and I shudder to utter the phrase,
cancel culture.
But really, what are they trying to get across here? Like, what is the joke? Based on my reading of these ads, it seems like they're poking fun at the tone-deaf nature and casual stereotyping perpetrated by corporations in a way that isn't so pointed that it's obviously some kind of sharp political critique. Or some other reading could just call the cavemen liberal snowflakes and laugh at their silly faces, but I think that's oversimplifying things. It's the paradoxical, serious, righteous indignation of these bougie, elitist cavemen coupled with their ridiculous appearance that makes these videos so entertaining and their performances so layered. It's also very interesting to note that since the cavemen are portrayed as some sort of minority being mistreated by a big corporation, it's easy to see GEICO as the villain of these ads, which is yet another example of anti-advertising, or when an advertisement tells the consumer not to buy a product, shows the product in a bad light, or makes fun of itself in some way. You'll notice that anti-advertising is a very common theme on this channel. Around 2007, when the sitcom Cavemen was picked up by ABC, the GEICO Cavemen were truly at the peak of their popularity. So much so that in 2008, the GEICO Cavemen were awarded a spot on the Madison Avenue Walk of Fame, an honor bestowed by Advertising Week on brand icons similar to the Hollywood Walk of Fame, but for commercial mascots. The Cavemen joined an elite group of advertising legends like the Kool-Aid Man, Chester Cheetah, Fudgy the Whale, and of course their brother, the GEICO Gecko. It must truly be an honor to be mentioned among such greats as Fudgy the Whale. GEICO were going caveman crazy back in 2007, so much so that they had their cavemen appear at live events. You might be surprised to find out that in 2007, very early in his TV career, actor and comedian Eric Andre played a GEICO caveman when he crashed the sports show Washington Post Live at a Washington Wizards basketball game.
They picked up Anderson Varejao, who had signed an offer sheet with the Charlotte Bobcats, and hold on a second, Chris. Excuse me, can we help you? What's going on?
No, I'm fine. I'm fine.
What are you doing?
I'm just going to check my email.
You know, we got a show going on here.
Oh, that's fine. You can do the show.
Email? You know about that email stuff?
Yeah. What is that supposed to mean?
Nothing. I guess
what was that supposed to mean?
It's so easy a caveman can do the email.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. No one's ever said that before.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
Okay.
For some reason, the GEICO caveman is here on the set.
It's not the GEICO.
I say the word. Can you take him down? Let me ask you about Anderson Varejao. Just signed now with the Cavaliers because they matched the offer sheet. Excuse me. Sorry about that,
Russ,
Chris.
I think you found a new friend.
I did. I'm going to take him home with me.
I'm sure your wife is looking forward to that.
Yes. Is Varejao in the building?
Caveman is here. Look good.
I hired this guy.
You look
not
nice.
Not me, but he's my partner.
Let me see your resume.
You look.
That's your partner.
That's my partner. That's
need an upgrade, buddy. Need an upgrade.
So clearly, you've got a lot of experience. I mean, things don't bother you like this weather. I mean, that you're used to.
What are you trying to say?
Well, I mean,
the weather's fine.
Yeah, it is.
The weather's fine.
Yeah.
Doesn't bother me. Does it bother you?
I had no problem getting here today.
Okay. All right.
How about the game? You like hoops?
Yeah, I like hoops.
I mean,
I like the game. The game's great.
You can shoot the rock, I'm guessing.
Great. You letting him steer this ship? You're the brains of the operation.
So he's the captain.
Do you have anything for this fine-looking man?
You letting him steer the ship? Come on.
You've done a good job with the caveman so far.
If I asked you to help us with the GEICO game highlights, could you do that?
I have nothing to do with the GEICO.
I know, but you could do the highlights though. I mean, this may
not
be
with GEICO's name on it. You better find some other endorsement. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I'm thinking of bringing a lizard in here in a minute to replace you. I don't know.
Yeah, well, something. Dude better do something because it's getting a little hot and heavy in here.
Well, tell me what you thought.
Given his penchant for public weirdness, casting Eric Andre as a caveman actually seems like a no-brainer. Here's some more footage of him interacting with hapless sports anchors on GEICO Sports Night.
Are you still offended by seeing that sign in the airport? Did you get over that?
First of all, that's not me in that commercial. Thank you. I know we all look the same, but we're people. Just like you. Think about that. Okay?
My bad.
You're bad. Interview over. Thanks.
Yeah, man, it's an honor to be working here. I mean, this is the epicenter of the New York sports world.
Yeah, this is like the beating heart of all that is New York sports.
That pretty much describes GEICO Sports Night.
GEICO? This is GEICO Sports Night?
Yeah.
I'm out of here. Unbelievable.
GEICO Sports Night, every night at 6, 10, and 1 a.m. only on SNY.
Eric Andre talked to Spin about his experience as a GEICO Caveman. I used to be a GEICO Caveman for live events. I was a corporate mascot. It was the silliest job. It was actually awesome and fun. They just needed somebody to go to hockey games and shit. I was just a high-end mascot. I was a high-end corporate whore. We did Lollapalooza, we did Yankee games. They wanted me to walk around a hunting supply store outside the Super Bowl for no reason and just pick up bow and arrows and be like, hey, I'm just shopping for things that kill deer. The Cavemen campaign continued until 2010, where the very last two commercials, a crossover with the Discovery Channel show Deadliest Catch, saw a caveman join the crew of an Alaskan crab fishing boat. The joke was no longer that he was a caveman, but rather a soft metrosexual urbanite sharing a boat with a bunch of rough and tough macho men. Do you remember that show, Deadliest Catch? Is it still on? Holy shit, they're on season 18. Who watches it anymore? Speaking of TV shows, let's start talking about the real meat of this documentary, the TV sitcom, Cavemen. Marketing professional Rachel Smith wrote an essay titled Beyond Parody, a content analysis of persuasive parodies inspired by mainstream advertising, wherein she talks about the GEICO Cavemen commercials and their consequences on the human race. In it, she says, one can hardly blame the ad men for jumping at the opportunity to turn their supposed to have been a 3-spot ad campaign into a television show. The Cavemen already won a place in pop culture, so there was an established audience. The main question being asked was, is the concept translatable to TV? Loaded stares, snarky one-liners, and pithy comments fill 15 to 30-second spots more than adequately. But could it fill 30 minutes without getting old? Could it sustain an entire series of 30-minute shows? The critics said no, but I'll let you be the judge of that.
It all started with us, the cavemen. Since day one, our people have always been where the action is. Sure, maybe not front and center, but if you're enjoying your modern civilization, you might want to send us a little thank you note. We're not that hard to find. We're right here beside you. We're really not that different from you, just a little better looking.
If you were not watching ABC's primetime programming in the year 2007, then chances are you missed an opportunity to watch Cavemen. It is impossible to find anywhere officially and impossible to find in high-def quality. I tried, y'all. I really did. You can basically only watch it on YouTube in 3-part sections, uploaded in 2009 in glorious 240p by YouTube user The Disneyland Kid. If not for these YouTube uploads, I honestly wonder if this show would be considered completely lost media. Though it initially was planned, the show never even got an official DVD release. So I actually went ahead and bought this bootleg copy of Cavemen on DVD, hoping for some HD footage. But no, that was very foolish of me to think so. The content on this DVD is actually just the YouTube videos burned to a DVD with menus that look like this. Yeah, I guess I had my hopes a little too high with that one. Great. But wait, there's a twist. Through my hard-hitting investigative journalism, I was able to discover an unbelievably rare DVD that contains 4 standard definition episodes of the Cavemen TV show in an old broadcast 4:3 aspect ratio, which is the best looking caveman footage you will find on the internet. You may be wondering where I found that exactly, but for the sake of the story, let's just assume that it's the same yard sale that I was able to find this beautiful bootleg copy of Star Wars. I honestly think it's important to make some kind of record of the content of these episodes in case the stuff currently available on YouTube somehow gets wiped and the show actually becomes lost media. The TV show Cavemen was developed by Josh Gordon, Will Speck, and Joe Lawson. You may remember that Joe, along with Noel Ritter, wrote the original commercials for GEICO and came up with this whole caveman concept. What I forgot to mention is that Josh Gordon and Will Speck were actually the directors and brain trust of the original GEICO commercials. So essentially, most of the original team behind the original GEICO spots found themselves at the helm of the TV sitcom. In the years following the sitcom's cancellation, Joe Lawson has gone on to write for shows like Modern Family and BoJack Horseman. The latter of the two saw him winning the 2017 Writers Guild Award for animation. Clearly, Joe has been able to recover from this whole caveman sitcom fiasco. Cavemen stars Bill English as Joel Claybrook, a responsible stick-in-the-mud employed at Norsk Build, an IKEA parody. His brother Andy Claybrook, played by Sam Huntington, an excitable Labrador Retriever type who spends most of his time lamenting his breakup with his ex-girlfriend. And finally, comedian Nick Kroll as their roommate Nick Hedge, a lazy and cynical pseudo-intellectual caveman in grad school, perpetually working on his dissertation. Supporting cast includes Caitlin Doubleday as Joel's Homo sapien girlfriend Kate, Stephanie Lamellin as Thorne, Kate's bimbo bestie, and Tony Award winner Julie White as Leslie, Kate's alcoholic mom and the landlady of the Cavemen's condominium. ABC promoted the show as a unique buddy comedy that offers a clever twist on stereotypes and turns race relations on its head. Well, that doesn't seem like an incredibly loaded sentence, and I'm sure there will be absolutely no controversy regarding the show at all.
It's false. No way. Not this time. No way. We got you. Not a chance. No. Not this time.
It was the pilot that was the main offender. In fact, the response to its initial test screening was so abysmal, it never saw the light of day in the US, ultimately airing on Australian television in 2008. I think giving a play-by-play of the pilot episode will really illustrate how maybe this kind of content wouldn't fly these days. The episode opens with Joel, Nick, and Joel's brother, named Jamie in the pilot, played by Dash Myhawk, watching the morning news, expressing their disdain for seeing them cover a recent robbery perpetrated by a caveman.
Why do you have to be a caveman? Of course it's a caveman. They only put it on TV when it's a caveman. You think that was the only robbery that night? No, but it's the one they choose to show.
At large, the police have released this sketch. Police are asking anybody.
I mean, look at that. Is that supposed to be one of us?
I think you may already be seeing some analogies being drawn between cavemen and other groups of people, but let's continue. Our friend John Lehr actually makes a little cameo appearance in the pilot as the weather caveman. Nick is not very happy about that.
Do a little 4th of July dance. Come on. Dance with the man, monkey. The man really turns it on. Oh my God, you sell out!
We learn at Norsk Build that Joel has been invited by his fiancée, Kate, to attend a barbecue at her parents' Atlanta country club. He wants to leave a good impression and get her father's blessing to marry his daughter. Joel wrangles his caveman bros together and they drive to the country club. Along the way, they have a conversation about the use of the slur derived from the word Cro-Magnon.
Please don't use that word.
It's okay if we use it.
It's not okay.
Not sure why they felt the need to make a tongue-in-cheek reference to the most offensive racial slur in the English language, but gotta be honest, this is making me a little itchy. Doubly so since the main cast are about as white as the fresh upholstery on an IKEA Harlanda. Also, I just want to mention that Cro-Magnon are actually classified as early modern humans and that the cavemen of the show are implied to be Neanderthals since they consider themselves to be distinct from Homo sapiens, so that slur doesn't even make sense, but it's probably best not to think too much about it. Moving on. They get into the barbecue by way of a golf cart, and we see various instances of Joel desperately trying to make a good impression, Nick cynically snickering at every aspect of the elitist country club, and holy shit, is that the old lady from Twin Peaks? Meanwhile, Jamie perpetuates some caveman stereotypes by being a good dancer and good at sex. Do those stereotypes ring a bell for you? Let me quote Gail Pennington of St. Louis Today. What the show didn't need an uproar over whether the cavemen are actually a metaphor for African Americans. Kinda hard to deny in the pilot, isn't it? The episode ends with Joel becoming a walking caveman stereotype through a series of mishaps, and then declaring that he's going to marry Kate whether their prejudiced asses like it or not. Though the showrunners say otherwise in an Entertainment Weekly interview, I personally do think that the horrible feedback from test screenings of the pilot had some impact on how they retooled the show moving forward. The focus groups probably told them to cool it with making cavemen one-to-one analogous with African Americans, because there is definitely a shift in how they treat the quote-unquote race issue in future episodes of the show, with cavemen essentially becoming a stand-in for any and all minority groups of any kind, rather than one specific racial group. In the Entertainment Weekly article, showrunners Gordon and Speck actually cite the Amish and Hasidic Jewish communities as inspirations for caveman society. The ambiguity of it all, and a bit more world building towards the end of the series, at least doesn't make the show feel immediately horribly tone deaf like the pilot. At least that's what Nick Kroll asserted in an interview with New York Magazine. It's not about any specific group, it's a parable for anyone who's ever felt like an outsider. At the same time, it's just a show about three dudes hanging out together in San Diego. Well, let's see if that rings true. Season 1, Episode 1 of Cavemen, titled Her Embarrassed of Caveman, begins with a swanky party scene where we learn that protagonist Joel's brother, Andy, has been dumped by his ex and he's going to be staying with his brother to get away for a while. We learn Joel's roommate, Nick, is an incredibly lazy grad student who doesn't approve of cavemen dating outside their species. We're then introduced to Norsk Build, where Joel works, and also to Kate, Joel's girlfriend, who has a burning desire to jump his bones at all hours of the day. John Lehr makes another cameo appearance as the weather caveman, but this time, Nick says,
I love this guy.
So already we are seeing a departure from the characters and continuity established in the pilot. Andy continues to be pathetic, so Nick takes him out to lunch, and by that I mean makes Andy pay for his meal.
By the way, I have $0.
Oh, I'll get it. You think they'll take traveler's checks?
Wow.
On his way back from work, Joel bumps into his racist landlady. Or technically, speciesist, I guess.
Hey, listen, you know I'm not one to pass judgment, but I would so appreciate it if when I'm trying to show a unit to prospective tenants, if you and your friends could keep down that primal grunting that you do.
What are you talking about? I'm just gonna go.
I'm not passing judgment, Nick.
I'm Joel.
Nuh-uh. Oh my God. I'm sorry. Maybe one of you guys should tie like a piece of colored ribbon in your hair. I do that when I'm traveling to my suitcase. It's so much easier for everybody.
I'll keep that in mind.
Joel spots Nick and Andy playing Wii Sports on their new Nintendo Wii, which was very cool and all the rage in 2007. Joel reveals that his secret girlfriend Kate is, in fact, a Homo sapien, which is a deep betrayal to Nick. Their mutual friend and hipster playboy Maurice, who you may recognize from the original GEICO spots, explains to Joel that some human women just have a thing for cavemen, whereas Nick asserts that Kate is ashamed of him, which is why their relationship is so secretive. This drives Joel crazy until he finally confronts Kate about it, where she admits that she kept it a secret because her friends judge her for getting into relationships too quickly. We learn that Kate used to date Maurice, and Nick lays this on Joel.
I thought you were gonna say that she had a fetish.
What? No. Okay. Because she dated a caveman before? Or two? Or however many? I mean, that hardly makes it a fetish.
No?
Look, cut it out, okay?
No problem, man. It's already in your head.
Episode 2 is titled Nick Get Job. You may be noticing a caveman speak theme in the titles of these episodes. In this episode, Nick gets a job with Joel at Norsk Build. The B-plot is about how Andy wants to seem friendly to their new neighbor, and in doing so unintentionally ends up terrifying her. That's basically it. Thinking that Nick's performance will make Joel look bad, He rats on him to their Norwegian supervisor and gets Nick fired. Joel thinks he's home free, but then Nick gets the idea to sue Norskbild for discrimination. Norskbild wants Joel to be a corporate puppet and vouch for their integrity, which leads to this genuinely funny exchange.
It would be just great if you could add a little something about how we at Norskbild are completely colorblind.
Do I really have to say that?
It would carry a lot of weight coming from someone like you.
It's discrimination lawsuits. It's such nonsense. It's frivolous.
Well, not every discrimination lawsuit's frivolous.
Oh, of course not. No one's saying that.
Yeah, you just did.
Well, you take anything out of context.
That is the context.
At the hearing, Joel admits that it was he who really got Nick fired, not the Norskbild management, and Nick admits that he was actually very bad at his job. In the end, we see that Andy succeeded in becoming friends with the new neighbor. Episode 3 is titled The Cave Woman. A new yogurt shop opens in town, and the cave boys are all enamored with the hot and sexy cave woman who works behind the counter named Heather. She insults Joel's girlfriend, Kate, but Joel is too much of a wimp to say anything about it. Nick likes Heather's aggressiveness, and the two start dating. But Nick quickly realizes that she's more than he bargained for, and in dominating him, actually turns him into a productive member of society.
Wait, your girlfriend is giving you orders?
She's not my girlfriend. It's completely casual, but she is serious about this deadline.
So Nick decides to confront her, but then ends up running away, which somehow frees him of her iron grasp. The episode ends with the cave gang being too scared to confront Heather, so now they pay a young boy to go buy yogurt for them. He steals their cash. Episode 4 is titled The Mascot. Nick gets a new job as a substitute teacher. Given his cynicism and rebellious attitude, Nick tells them that their public school history textbooks are a bunch of BS. I mean, word. And that it's up to him to enlighten them.
So it's the bottled water lobbyist.
No, think big picture. Who benefits from all this trucking?
Big oil.
Bam.
So what are we supposed to drink?
Exactly.
The B-plot sees Andy getting hired by their landlady, Kate's mom, as her personal accountant, where she asks him to cook the books and commit tax fraud for her, which he refuses to do. Nick is actually enjoying his job as a substitute teacher when he is shocked to see some bigoted caveman stereotypes at the pep rally. This leads to a really funny exchange between Nick and the principal.
It's not, nor has it ever been, our intention to offend anyone.
But you are.
Totally hear you. But our caveman mascot is a tradition that dates back to the founding of the school. It's part of our history. No different than, say, the Duke Blue Devils or the Crimson Tide.
Blue Devils don't exist, and you can't offend the Crimson Tide. It's an abstract concept. Cavemen do exist. Otherwise, you wouldn't have a pissed off one sitting here right now.
Got it. Totally hearing you. Perhaps the Washington Redskins would be a better example.
Yes, indeed they are, because there are a lot of Native Americans who are super ticked off about that.
And I hear them. They make a great point. But I think that you'll find that our mascot is in no way derogatory. On the contrary, he's a noble Neanderthal, a celebration of our strength and spirit. We always portray our caveman with dignity and respect.
Nick eventually loses his patience and beats up the caveman mascot character, revealing that the person inside is a small teenage girl. The crowd turns on him, so of course, he gets fired. Not only that, but the incident goes viral on YouTube, which was another new and cutting-edge technology at the time. Man, these cavemen just can't catch a break, huh? Episode 5 is called The Shaver. A new tenant has moved into the condo complex and Nick thinks that he's a shaver. What is a shaver? Well, a shaver is a closeted caveman who hides who they are by shaving their body hair every day. Nick immediately hates him for betraying his fellow cavemen.
I don't know, Nick. I mean, hate's a really strong word, don't you think? The guy's not hurting anybody.
Andy, that shaver is hurting all of us. By hiding who he is, he's saying it's not okay to be a caveman. I mean, it's 2007. It's not like the 80s when John Tesh had no choice but to shave.
There's also a scene where they begin a running joke that adult contemporary musician John Tesh is a caveman, obviously a shaver. Meanwhile, Joel gets passed over for promotion at Norsk Build, and then laments his bad luck to his roommates. Nick suggests that the reason he wasn't promoted was because he's a caveman.
And as long as there are sellouts like that shaver, nothing is ever gonna change.
Look, that's just victim mentality.
No.
Clearly, Joel has been reading some Thomas Sowell. While Nick claims to want caveman solidarity, his desire to out their neighbor without his consent underlines that at the end of the day, he's just a petty jerk. This episode's B-plot finds Andy... Always with the B-plot with Andy. B-plot Andy. This episode's B-plot finds Andy getting super aggressive and unleashing his road rage, which turns on Kate's best friend, Thorne. She starts chasing after Andy, attracted to his bad boy energy. But when he's ultimately confronted by another driver, he turns into a wimp, and Thorne immediately loses all attraction. So anyway, Joel decides to talk with their neighbor, Jake, and find out if he's a shaver for himself. It turns out that Jake is a smooth-talking grifter who's involved in a multi-level marketing scheme. He ends up convincing Joel to join, which makes Nick very pissed. Kate is concerned that Joel joined a cult, but he assures her that it's definitely not a cult. Nick ends up confronting Jake at one of his MLM meetings. That's multi-level marketing, not to be confused with Marxist-Leninist Maoists. Nick tries to publicly out Jake as a caveman to the crowd. Joel tries to smooth things over by explaining to Jake that Nick is under this crazy delusion that Jake is actually a caveman, which Jake finds ridiculous because he's, quote, super good looking and mega successful.
Stop clapping, you sheep.
You just implied that there's no way that you could be a caveman because you're so successful and you're so handsome.
Come on, Joel, that's just PC stuff. Forget about political correctness, think about profitable correctness.
You just said that cavemen are unsuccessful and ugly.
So the Cave Boys have a showdown with the racist snake oil salesman, which ends with Joel beating him up. They return to their condo, facing no consequences, apparently, where they find Andy listening to John Tesh. Then they all break into dance as the credits roll. That is the weirdest way to end that episode. Episode 6 is called Rock Vote. Kind of like rock the vote, get it? We open the episode with the worst Halo 3 gameplay I have ever seen. Andy is shooting a rock and then he punches the Arbiter in the face. He's on your team. What the hell are you doing, Andy? We soon learn that Andy, obviously not very bright, has never voted in any election in his life, as it's never interested him.
Oh, it just always seems like there's something more important to do. Die, Tartarus!
It's bizarre to me that the writers had enough knowledge of Halo to get the name of the character right, but not the fact that he's not even in the game that he's playing. Whatever. Basically, Joel and Nick are both trying to influence the way that Andy will vote. Joel supports a more conservative establishment candidate, and Nick supports a hippy-dippy caveman candidate. While they spar with words, they recreate the immortal debate about the efficacy of voting for a third-party candidate in America.
Look, Red Gold Dryer always runs and he never wins. You'd be throwing your vote away.
Only because people like you won't vote for him.
It's because he never wins.
Because you won't vote for him.
Apparently, someone broke into their condo and stole Andy's video games. Andy suddenly becomes a single-issue voter, preventing the theft of video game consoles. Andy would make a great Discord mod. Joel takes Andy and Nick to a fundraiser for Jack Whitman, the Homo sapien candidate. While there, Thorne tells Andy the only way to protect his video games is to exercise his Second Amendment rights.
Do you have a gun I can borrow?
I'm so sorry. I'm down to my last 2. Yeah, I'm always losing them.
Joel and Andy meet Jack Whitman, where the candidate pitches them his vision for a fascist police state, which Andy seems to like.
More jails, more police on the streets.
And more handguns for homeowners so they can shoot the criminal before they commit the crimes.
Well, I can't endorse that, but I like the way you think. You're very articulate.
Andy gets tricked into a photo op with Whitman, which he quickly exploits.
Look, we don't know how this happened, okay? I mean, Whitman, he seems like a good guy, and I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Joel really has been reading some Thomas L. Since Andy went to a shooting range and has become afraid of using weapons, he doesn't really like Whitman's tough on crime stance anymore, and decides to join Nick and see what the caveman candidate has to offer. But upon meeting him, they find out that he's a wacko who believes in a bizarre conspiracy that Big Gluten is destroying the country. Joel confronts Jack Whitman about using his brother as a photo op, and he then gets tricked into yet another disingenuous photo op. Basically, both Nick and Joel learn that their political candidates suck, which I actually think is a pretty good moral to the story. But they end up voting for a candidate named Witherspoon because they like Reese Witherspoon. So how does Andy ultimately cast his vote?
Witherspoon's got some really smart ideas on reducing classroom size and a community policing initiative and adding an additional carpool lane on the 5. I mean, this is really smart thinking. I mean, it's practical stuff that's gonna help improve the quality of life in San Diego.
Oh, look, how ironic. Now that was actually the last episode of Cavemen that ever aired on ABC. The show was put on hiatus during the Writers Guild of America strike in 2008, and then was canceled before the strike ended. Although 13 episodes, including the pilot, were produced for the show, only 6 of them ever aired in American markets. The final 6 episodes of the show and the pilot aired a year later in Australia on Channel 7. That's why in some subsequent footage, you may notice Australia's Channel 7 logo replacing the ABC logo in the bottom right-hand corner of the footage. Now, before we get into the back half of the show, I just wanted to mention really quick that this channel is completely demonetized. So if you think that this channel deserves some support and attention, you're enjoying this video so far, then consider becoming a Patreon member and checking out my Patreon in the description below. The more we're able to grow that community on Patreon, the more time and energy I'm gonna be able to dedicate to creating videos like this one. And we are so close to reaching our very first milestone, 10 Patreon members. So if you want to help us reach that goal and beyond, then consider checking out the Patreon. Again, it's in the description below. Episode 7 is titled Nick Jerk, Andy Work, which basically summarizes both the A and B plots of this episode. Joel realizes he can't spend any quality time with his girlfriend Kate with Nick hanging around the apartment all the time, and Andy gets a new office job. You may notice that Andy's supervisor looks familiar. That's Stephanie Courtney, who plays Flo, Progressive Insurance's longtime mascot. This episode was shot just before Courtney made her debut as the Progressive spokesperson in 2008. I find it incredibly weird that a TV show about car insurance mascots just so happened to cast another iconic car insurance mascot. Anyway, Nick is incredibly annoying to Joel because he can't get along with Kate, and Andy is incredibly annoying to his coworkers due to his inability to respect boundaries and personal space. In fact, he is so annoying at work that one of his coworkers shouts,
"What part of no don't you understand? We have a procedure here. Why can't you get that through your thick skull?"
All the employees now have mandatory racial sensitivity training, but at this point, Andy just wants to quit.
Okay, look, we have a situation here, Andy. We can't let you quit. It would appear that you were driven away by the racial insensitivity, and a lot of people would get into a lot of trouble. You know?
You trying to say that I'm stuck here?
Now that they have to keep Andy around, he now feels liberated, knowing he can act as annoying as he wants without being fired. With Joel staying at Kate's place and Nick spending most of his time in their condo alone, the two start missing each other, and Nick ultimately decides to apologize. Kate also makes an effort to get along with Joel's friends, and the episode ends on a happy note. That is actually the first time that's happened on this show. Episode 8 is titled Nick Sick. Nick gets a checkup at a free student clinic, and the doctor tells him that something in his blood work is not looking great. Though the doctor says not to worry about it, Nick is incredibly concerned. Their friend Maurice tells him that he might have cancer, and Andy promises to take care of him. In the B-plot, Thorne is convinced that Kate is going to dump Joel soon, and the rumor finds its way back to Joel. Kate herself is afraid of commitment, and so she just keeps avoiding Joel, which drives him crazy. At Norsk Build, Joel learns from his boss that he's taking time off for surgery.
What are you talking about?
We know, Joel. The HMO called to verify your employment. They always do when it is an expensive procedure.
I'm having a procedure?
It's okay, Joel. We can't fire you for having surgery. Handbook's very clear about that. Please, take as much time as you want. And by that, of course, I mean 5 business days maximum.
I need to go.
That's because Nick, who doesn't have health insurance, went to see a doctor about his elevated C proteins. They tell him he doesn't have cancer, but that his appendix is in really bad shape and he needs surgery right away. He lies and tells them that his name is Joel Claybrook. Joel confronts Nick about stealing his health insurance, but he decides to play along and pretend that he is Nick Hedge. After hearing that Joel is in the hospital, Kate finally goes to see Joel. Frustrated by her avoidant behavior, Joel breaks up with Kate at the hospital. We also learn that Nick's full test results came back fine, and he didn't actually need to have surgery at all.
5-minute exam, in and out, bye-bye appendix?
Pretty much.
Well, the good news is you don't need your appendix. The bad news is you're never getting rid of that scar. It's gonna look like a sad little mouth right above your peanut.
Episode 9 is called Caveman Holiday, and I think it's a great example of what this show could have been. A caveman holiday called Long Night is coming up, and Andy is super excited to celebrate. Nick is very cynical and doesn't really care, and Joel is too preoccupied with work. I'll let Andy explain what this holiday is about.
Long Night celebrates the coldest night in history when all the cavemen could have died, but they didn't. And you have a huge party and everyone's invited, even your worst enemies.
Can we just call it a personal day?
Oh, thank you. Oh, my brother Joel is gonna be so excited that we get to spend this together. You should come. It's so much fun. We chug grain alcohol and we eat a whole cow.
At Norsk Build, Joel is told by his corporate toady supervisor, played by French Stewart, who I know from Third Rock from the Sun, that a group of South Korean investors will be stopping by and wants his #1 employee, Joel, to give them a tour of the store. Andy and Nick run into Joel's ex Kate at the supermarket, and according to Long Night tradition, everyone is invited to the party no matter what, and so he has to extend an invitation. Joel admits to Andy that he has to work on Long Night, and Andy begs him to try to get out of it, but clearly Joel is just rejecting his caveman roots. Joel ultimately admits to Andy that it was his decision to work on Long Night. While Joel entertains the South Koreans at Norsk Build, Andy struggles to enjoy his long night party without his brother. Also, Heather the cave woman makes an appearance at the party. Eventually, Joel realizes that his boss, who he has been trying so hard to emulate, actually leads an incredibly sad, pathetic, and lonely life with no friends or family. In a scene right out of A Christmas Carol, Joel has a Scrooge moment, running through the street shouting, "Happy Long Night." Joel and Andy make up, and there are already hints that Joel and Kate will be getting back together. Wow, that was fast. And now, we get the story of Long Night told by Maurice.
In the time before shoes, beyond the wall of mountains, there was a winter colder than any winter before. And on the coldest, darkest, longest night, the cavemen were barely clinging to life. They were hungry. And between them, they had but one cow to eat. And as the night wore on, more and more people appeared at the cave. Friends and family. Strangers and even worse enemies, all cold, all starving, all desperate for succor. The cavemen could have sent them away, but they didn't. They opened their hearts, and this is what saved their lives, because the warmth of all those bodies pressing together in the cave kept them alive. And from that day until the end of days, so shall it be. Long live Long
night.
Long live long night!
The episode ends with all of the cavemen guys shacking up with their respective love interests. Looks like there's finally been a nice turn of fortune for our protagonists. Episode 10 is called Andy the Stand-Up, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this one because it's basically just that episode of SpongeBob, Squirrel Jokes, which aired 7 years earlier, and I'm sure that wasn't even an original concept then. Andy decides to take up stand-up comedy. His first time on stage, he absolutely bombs, but his second time on stage, he decides to make some jokes about his stupid Uncle Rod.
I was up in Kelseyville, there's a little caveman enclave up there at this family reunion, and it was insane. My grandmother is this really great cook, and she won't let anybody in the kitchen, so my Uncle Rod, he's not the sharpest tool in the shed. He's like, oh, me hungry, me want to eat food. Oh, food, oh, food, oh, food. So my grandma's like, there's brownies out on the patio. So Rod goes out there, he's like, brownies, and I look out there, he's got a wood chip in his mouth. And I'm like, Rod, you can't eat wood. And he's like, smelled like food to me.
Why is that funny?
Nick tells Andy that his jokes are insulting to cavemen, and Andy insists that he's not making fun of cavemen, he's just making fun of his Uncle Rod. But Andy soon learns that actually, all of these Wonder-Bread frat boys are just laughing at him, not with him. He regrets his choices and tries to change his act, but of course, nobody likes his new act. This causes Nick to go on a tirade insulting the audience. The episode ends with Joel singing Kiss from a Rose by Seal, which is even funnier with no context.
There used to be a grain tower alone on the sea, and you became the light on the dark side of me. Love remained the drug that's a high and not the pill.
Episode 11 is called Cave Kid. The cavemen get new neighbors, a couple of limousine liberals who adopt a cave kid, and they want Joel to mentor their son. Nick is annoyed by this, thinking that he would be better suited to give Rockwell a proper education. Joel's hot new coworker Tracy is very impressed by Joel's mentorship, and so he's extra invested in keeping it going. Later on, the writers decide to recycle a joke from the pilot while Nick mentors the kid.
Police have released this sketch. Police are asking anybody with information.
Is that supposed to be one of us?
I know, it looks like a love child of Neil Young and a Sasquatch.
Just ignore him.
While Joel brags about what a great mentor he is to Tracy, Rocky is out with Nick experiencing some caveman culture. Nick has taken him to watch a game of Wolfbone with a group of cavemen decked out in tracksuits who look like they just stepped off the boat from the former Yugoslavia. Of course, Rocky has a great time, and now Joel has some competition. Joel decides to buy Rocky's affection by taking him out to dinner, but the plan backfires. Rocky just wants to hang out with Nick all the time, so Joel decides to take Rocky to what is essentially a Hooters, but that plan also backfires.
Rocky?
Dad?
So in the end, neither Joel or Nick are Rocky's mentors, but now Rocky has a rebellious spirit and thinks for himself and decides to hang out with them anyway. Episode 12, the final episode of Cavemen, is called Hunters and Gatherers. At a bar, Maurice informs Nick that he intends to date his ex, Heather. Later on, Joel parks in a Norskbild executive's parking space and gets his car towed. The next time we see Maurice and his new lady friend, Heather has completely changed her personality and is now acting incredibly nice and considerate. Maurice later explains that the reason Nick couldn't handle Heather and he can is because Maurice is a hunter and Nick is a gatherer. Basically the caveman version of the alpha, beta, sigma thing that pickup artists like to talk about. Joel initially thinks that Maurice is full of BS until Maurice also designates Joel as a fellow hunter, which he seems to like. Joel is forced to apologize to the executive for his parking mistake, but he only ever interacts with his two incredibly obnoxious assistants. Joel ends up waiting for him all day, which is a total waste of time because he's not even in his office. Nick tries to confront Heather, but ends up getting his ass kicked, and ultimately accepts his role as gatherer, and helps Joel get revenge on the two asshole assistants by setting them up to park in the executive's private space. And that wraps up ABC's Cavemen. Obviously, there's a lot of details and, subtleties that I glossed over here, but I just wanted to condense 5 hours of entertainment into, a quick, easy to digest segment. Or, maybe it wasn't that quick, but definitely less than 5 hours. My personal impression of the show is that it just seems like any other sitcom of its time. The show it most often reminded me of, both in style and tone, is actually Modern Family, which is interesting because, like I mentioned earlier, showrunner Joe Lawson actually went on to write for Modern Family after Cavemen. While network sitcoms are definitely not my cup of tea, I honestly find it pretty amazing how this show is considered by so many critics to be one of the worst TV shows of all time. TV Guide, New York Post, and the Chicago Tribune are just a few of the outlets hailing Cavemen as some of the worst of the worst. But to be honest, I don't get it. I personally don't like The Big Bang Theory. I think it totally sucks, and yet it's insanely popular and has won dozens of awards. So why so much hate for this show? I mean, it's an easy target on the face of it. A TV show based on a series of GEICO commercials? I mean, it sounds like absolute garbage. Funny enough, the GEICO advertisers actually lampshaded the failed sitcom in a Super Bowl ad.
Go ahead and state item.
Huh. A TV show. About us. What was the deal with that makeup?
Exactly. Why not just use real cavemen?
Well, I thought their diction was good. You could hear everything they were saying. At least they didn't say, "It's so easy,
Yeah. There's that.
I think at the end of the day, there were two big factors as to why everyone hated this show. One was the bandwagon effect. Once one influential critic deemed the show awful, that's just how everyone viewed it. And two, I think a lot of folks compared the show to the TV commercials. The commercials, in their prime, really were beloved by millions of people. It's hard to exactly express how popular those commercials were if you weren't around to experience it. Cavemen was probably viewed as a petty cash grab and a testament to the unoriginality of network TV, which is true, but at the same time, it was a pretty novel idea among sitcoms. While there are certainly issues and criticisms to be made of the show, the amount of total hatred for it, especially when compared with other mediocre and forgettable sitcoms of its time, it's just weird. But that's just my opinion. While all I can do personally is give you a synopsis and some opinions, I'd like to really dig deep and uncover what it was like to be a part of this show. For better or for worse, it's a part of TV history. It was the only time before or since that commercial mascots were given their own primetime series on a major network. And I think I found someone who might be a little more qualified to talk about this topic.
Hi, I'm Bill English. I played Joel in the Caveman TV show, Cavemen.
When I first saw Bill, I was honestly pretty shocked by how different he looked from his caveman counterpart. But I think that's just a testament to the amazing work done by the special effects makeup artists on the show. When we began our chat, Bill explained to me that he actually got the audition for Cavemen very quickly after moving to LA after having lived in New York for several years. He was only staying in town for a month, but landed the role of Joel right away.
We shot the pilot. The pilot went well. And then the next thing I had heard was that we got picked up. And the show was, going to be airing going to be recording 13 episodes. And I just thought this was so crazy because I've only been out here for a month.
Right.
I book a pilot, and then the pilot gets picked up, and we're going to series, and I was like, this is great. I should have been out here years ago. It's so easy. But yeah, it was a really pretty fast experience with the auditions and everything. But then once we got into the run of the show, and we were shooting at the Sony lot, and I'd wake up at 2:00 every morning and drive to the lot, and I'd have to sit down in the makeup chair by 3 a.m. and go through about 3.5 to 4 hours of makeup, and you know, they'd bring us breakfast and everything like that. But it was intense. It was intense every day, and it took a lot longer than usual to shoot this because of all the makeup and the prosthetics and everything. And also, Josh and Will were coming from the commercial world, and so they were more accustomed to spending all day on a 30-second commercial as opposed to, you know, shooting a 22-minute TV show. So that took some getting used to as well, and that just meant some really long hours, especially for the Cavemen. Yeah, I think my first week I logged 85 hours in 5 days.
Wow. Yeah. Something that I was personally really curious about was the recasting of Dash Myhawk as Jamie, Joel's brother, from the pilot. Obviously, he was replaced by Sam Huntington as Andy.
We shot the pilot, and then they had reworked a bunch of things, including that character, which I don't think even really became. I don't think they quite went down the same road that they had started off with on that character, and so for whatever reason they brought in Sam when they made a pivot with the character choice, and I think Dash had input in that decision as well, and I know that he had other things going on as well. So I think that, coupled with the really intense makeup, was enough to dissuade him from moving forward. But then when Sam came in, we just had this really instant, amazing dynamic between the three of us, because it was, I come from a pretty big, improv background. Nick has done tons of improv and stand-up, and is just one of the quickest, sharpest guys I've ever met in my life. And Sam he's just the sweetest, funniest guy, and I don't know, it was instant chemistry. We had no problems, with each other and just riffing off each other, and we were instantly bonded because we were under these masks with this glue and the constant finickiness of the amazing makeup guys that we had. We each had our own individual makeup artists that we were with throughout the entire run, and it messes with your head after a while, when you feel sort of trapped in this cage.
Bill explained to me that despite their rigorous schedule and long work days, the actors were actually encouraged and given the freedom to improvise and riff off of each other. The directors, Josh Gordon and Will Speck, would just let the cameras roll and capture a ton of footage, which is pretty unusual for TV shows, by the way. Through this unusual creative process, the cast was actually able to develop a pretty good chemistry.
And then when we got into the marketing side of things, when we would meet all the different ABC affiliates and they would send their interviewers from all the different, local stations and stuff around the country to interview us, I feel like during those interviews is where we strengthened our bond even more, because we could really start to develop who these characters were. Nick was the more snarky, sarcastic guy. I was a bit more straight-laced, everyman sort of guy, and Sam was the kind of wild card, goofy, just happy to be there kind of character. And I don't know, it was just an instant bond that we had, and then that continued throughout the series.
You are not the guys from the GEICO commercials.
No.
Are they jealous that you're totally stealing their thunder?
Our cousins?
They are cousins.
Why don't you guys just shave?
Why do you want us to shave?
Everyone
Why
does.
are you so desperate for us to be like you?
No, I mean, everybody
Do I
should-
tell you to chop off your pretty blonde hair and grow out beautiful, luxurious brunette hair?
I did it one time with a straight razor.
That was bad.
I did. I cut myself. I had to go to the hospital for a couple days.
And I shaved my privates once for a film I was working on.
Nick!
Because it looks bigger.
It was an art film, and he was in college, and we all do crazy things.
It was
in
an art
college.
film. It was based on a piece on Foucault I was reading at the time, and it was more of an experiential than it was. And we don't need to get into it. It's on the internet.
Regardless.
Have you tried conditioner?
I condition everything, and I mean like literally like I condition my whole body. And there's this oatmeal.
Yeah, he eats it. He
moisturizer
uses oatmeal scrub that he eats for breakfast.
And it's only $23 a bottle.
Okay,
How
Joel,
about that?
you know what?
And you don't buy it.
First, one, I'm getting a job, so I will be able to buy my own
You've been
oatmeal.
getting a job
I will be able
for
to buy my
18
own oatmeal moisturizer. And two, taste it. It's delicious. Taste it.
Have you ever met a grown child before?
Today's your lucky day. Everything to do with this show is a little slice of life, and
I beat you in the eye competition.
It's just a matter. It's just a matter of finding the right subjects and bringing them into our lives.
Right.
You know.
Like representations of cavemen in modern media, which is my dissertation, which I'm working on right now.
He mentions this every time.
The invisible beard is the thesis.
It's been a work in progress for 7 years.
And it gets better every day.
What is a dissertation? Like, someone just tell me, because
it's an examination, an intellectual examination of a subject of importance.
So fine, but why are you what are you writing it for?
It's a reason to sit around the house all day and do nothing.
What am I writing?
It sounds like.
What am I writing it for?
Yeah, what are you writing it for?
Because I need to open the world's eyes to it, and I need to get a doctorate, and I can't sit at a desk at a job because of my back.
Can't sit at a desk at a job.
Yes, sciatica, apparently.
I'm assuming that interview you just watched was from pretty early in the show's development, considering the only footage they had to show was from the pilot. Sam Huntington wasn't even in that episode, and also it never aired in the US. Now you'll notice that even for these little interviews and promo videos, the Cavemen actors still had to wear full prosthetics and special effects makeup, which was a huge undertaking throughout the course of the show.
We got there I showed up at 3 a.m, but the makeup guys were there at 2 o'clock in the morning, and they left an hour after we did because they had to clean and prep for the next day. And we had it was like a silicone grade, a medical grade silicone that the masks were made out of that were incredible. And you could get this close and not tell that it was makeup. It was just really incredible, the work that they did every day. So that took them getting used to. We couldn't eat anything really like larger than, like we would take pieces of deli meat with some cheese and some mustard, and they would roll those up for us just so we could go eat them, because you didn't want to open up your mouth. You couldn't like bite into an apple because you had glue around your mouth and the mustache and the beard, and it was just so you had to find creative ways to have like small cylindrical food to eat throughout the day.
Why don't you bite into that burger?
I would love to bite into this burger, but unfortunately I have to cut it using a fork and knife because I can't open my big fat mouth wide enough to eat it.
So obviously every day started with several hours in the makeup chair, but I was curious, what was an average day on set like for Bill as an actor?
I feel like once we got past the first couple episodes and the growing pains of shooting the show, we sort of worked through that stuff, and then they started to bring in other directors, some pretty seasoned TV directors that really made our job easier in a lot of ways, where they would set up the shots just, okay, we're going to start with the master, and then we'll follow you in, and then we'll push into the 2-shot, and we'll get your overs, all in one smooth motion. And that really helped to cut down the hours on set, just to sort of and that actually, as you look a little bit later in the series, you can notice some of those. Even the camera work is a little different. It's a little more nuanced and stuff as you move further into the series. So just getting the opportunity to see other seasoned TV people, especially, doing their work, and that I've used, it was just like a masterclass for me. I've used that experience in every other production I've worked on ever since, especially in TV. It was just, I don't know, I had to pinch myself sometimes. Those days where it was just wild to look at myself in the mirror and to see where I was and what I was doing, and it was, for an actor, you want to be able to transform fully into a character, and there was no better way to do it than something like this. Because we would finish probably around 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. I would drive back home about half an hour, and then shower. I would shave at night, and they gave us this moisturizer that they give to burn victims to put on to keep our skin healthy. Prepare you for the next morning. That they didn't want 5 o'clock shadow or anything like that to stick the mask on. And then I would around 9:30 or so, 9 or 9:30, I would get a message. A messenger would come and drop off the script for the next day. I'd look over the script, and as many times as I could. Fall asleep around 10:30, and then the alarm would go off at 2, and back at it the next day. And that was for 3.5 months. It was like that.
Now that just goes to show you the dedication of Bill and the makeup team and everybody for getting up and having to do that every day for 3.5 months. Now, before we wrapped up our conversation, I had to ask Bill, what was it like witnessing Cavemen's terrible reception from the inside? And obviously, there was a lot of controversy surrounding the show. So, given all of these scathing reviews and the controversy, what was it like for Bill? What was his reaction?
It was shocking to us, and I think then afterward, people would just refer back to that article or that response of saying, "Oh, well, no, this is what it's about. Like, you don't need to watch the show. They're there to, I don't know, to piss off people or something." I didn't get it. At the same time, it was beyond my control. I'm the actor here to do my best to create a good performance and bring a character to life. That's my job. It was too bad that it went like that, because as the series went along, especially with long nights, and then there's a couple episodes that didn't air, that just, I don't know, you could put yourself into these guys' shoes. You could put yourself into dealing with various customs around whatever holiday that it is that you celebrate, or whatever your relationship is with your girlfriend's family, or your someone's extended family, or how you're perceived to other people. If anything, I would hope that it would be a more universal way for people to say, oh, okay, yeah, we have more common ground here than we might think initially. I think that was the goal of the show in a lot of ways. But I guess if you miss the mark with the pilot, you don't have a really long leash. But that really shows the kind of fickle nature of Hollywood too. You don't, or any, I've done a ton of theater and stuff in New York too. And if one reviewer isn't too keen on the show, or they don't really like it, that can sink a production quickly. When you have other people, when you're relying on other people to make decisions about what you're going to watch, you know what I mean? But that's just the business. That's, there's nothing you can do about that. But yeah, I don't know. It was pretty unique. It's still the most unique production I've ever been a part of.
Well, it certainly was a very unique project, and I'm glad that I was able to showcase that there were a lot of talented people involved in the making of this show, even if the end result was less than the sum of its parts. It also shows how the writing can really make or break a show, and that if Cavemen was approached from a different angle in the writer's room, perhaps it could have been successful. So what do you think? Does the TV sitcom Cavemen deserve all of the hate that it gets, or is it just another average sitcom? I'll let you be the judge of that. Alright, now it's time to see how deep this rabbit hole goes when we dive into the world of Caveman's Crib. While the sitcom Cavemen was getting ready to air on primetime television, GEICO was going dark on TV ads for a while, a stipulation of their new show deal. No new TV spots were produced during this period, but GEICO still wanted to keep the Cavemen, and in turn their insurance company, on people's minds. So they decided to branch out into the world of digital. Web marketing was very new back in 2006 when this idea was being thrown around. All kinds of new and innovative ideas were being thrown around, and one of those ideas was Caveman's Crib, an incredibly popular interactive Flash website which is now lost media. It took me months of research, but I was able to discover 2 recordings of 2 different versions of this site on some super obscure web pages. Funny enough, Joe Lawson and the Martin Agency who created the Cavemen were not directly involved with the creation of Caveman's Crib. The idea for a new GEICO Cavemen website was pitched in-house, and the responsibility ultimately landed on someone at the company named Joe Talbott to develop the idea. Joe was known around the office as a creative filmmaker, and they figured he would be the best man for the job of making a quirky caveman website. The idea that GEICO brought to Joe initially was a dress up the caveman website, almost like a flash game you'd find on Girls Go Games, but with cavemen. Joe thought hard about what would make this website more entertaining and landed on the idea of creating a fully immersive experience, almost like a point-and-click adventure, with the TV actors reprising their roles as cavemen. The premise for the very first version of Caveman's Crib was that the cavemen were preparing to host an elegant metropolitan party, and the visitor to the site showed up early before the party started. Jeff Daniel Phillips' Caveman, through the magic of compressed video and a green screen, would serve as your host. You could click through the apartment and discover all these little pieces of content like magazine articles, voicemails, and videos. I could continue telling you all about this lost website, but I think it would be better if Joe Talbott would tell you in his own words.
Hi, I'm Joe Talbott. I am the creative director of all the Caveman's Crib experiences.
During our interview, Joe reminded me that while he served as the creative director of Caveman's Crib, he was just one member of a team of incredibly talented individuals that made this thing happen. I really appreciated that he didn't want to take all of the credit for himself, and just keep that in mind as we continue watching. I think now would be a great time to mention that our good friend John Lehr, as well as Eric Andre, both appeared as cavemen on Caveman's Crib alongside Jeff Daniel Phillips, although they didn't show up until the website's second iteration called Party Out of Bounds.
So when I had the opportunity to think about what we could do with the characters beyond Dress Up the Caveman, the first step was, who are they? And so I had to kind of like start thinking about like what they represent to me. Now at that point, there were only a handful of spots. So, you know, looking at those spots and thinking about how they behaved, I had to start pulling threads from every spot to kind of, I built an entire life for each character. So I had the whole life of Jeff's character, you know, working in the finance business, single, from Reno, and sort of what his whole background was and how he, why does he have roommates? Well, here's Jeff. He's, here's John's character, and John's, down in his luck. He's having real trouble, so he needs a place to stay. And then, these guys are throwing an awesome party, so they need a really, cool guy, like Babe Magnet sort of thing. So they get this Eric Andre's character, who's like, the bartender doing like bartender tricks and stuff like that. So it's like, really, that was all dreamed up out of the overall world.
Now's probably also a good time to mention that this website went through 4 major transformations, with each chapter telling a different story. The 4 versions of the site were titled Host with the Most, Party Out of Bounds, Eyes Wide What?, which was a Halloween party. By the way, this still photo is the only evidence of what this website looked like. And iHeartCavemen.com. We'll explain all of those in detail in just a moment. Before getting the go-ahead to work on the very first version of Caveman's Crib, Joe Talbott had to pitch his idea to Joe Lawson and to Steve Bassett, who was the person in charge of the GEICO account at the Martin Agency. He needed to get their blessing, since Joe was working directly for GEICO, not the Martin Agency.
At that time, if you go back in time, a lot of businesses saw digital as a thing they had to do. E-commerce wasn't even huge at that point. So they were just like, this isn't. So it was just interesting to me that they had a great opportunity to screw me, and for whatever reason didn't. And I bless Steve Bassett and Joe because Joe is like, it's good. I mean, it's really smart. Like it really works. I mean, it's really, what you guys did is really smart. And this was like storyboards and mood boards and, just basically a presentation of what we're planning to do and how each room will have things, and the kitchen, and because they're like foodies, of course, in my mind, and there's like a tie on the doorknob in case somebody hooks up, but of course they never hook up because they're pretentious or whatever. Everything had like 5 to 10 random interactions. So if you knock on the door on the website, what he says and what he does is random. It could be all kinds. So it had huge amount of length of visits, like hours of average view time, which is, of course, would be never happen today. No one has that kind of time. But then there was less cool shit on the internet. I wanted the world to be rich, so I marked up all of his textbooks. I wrote a whole magazine. I talked to all my musician friends and got really cool tracks that could be on the iPod. I made commercials for the TV. I used GEICO commercials on the TV. I just in every area, I just content.
It's pretty easy to forget how cool and weird and unusual this kind of thing was back in February of 2007. In a moment, Joe is going to tell us some details about how the Flash website was made and what assets the film crew needed to capture for the site. But first, I'd just like to take a moment to talk to y'all about some film terms. Plates, or plate shots, are stationary images of backgrounds without subjects that are captured on film for use in compositing. Compositing is when you combine two overlapping images into one scene. Okay, take it away, Joe.
We shot all the plates at one of my friends has a mid-century modern house just outside of DC. So we used his home as the home. So all the pictures you see are from his home, with the exception of some creative geography we did to create it, to move the house around to make it easier to film. So we did some Photoshop work because it was plates. There were no tracking shots like we would now with XR and stuff. We could have done this differently, but at the time we had to think really simple. And we did all the measuring of the, how close to the person and the focal length, and recorded all the stuff. So then when we went and shot Jeff on a soundstage in Hollywood, and that was really fun because Jeff's really brings a lot of his own sort of like comic sensibility. He's like a big goof like I am, and he's like, I'm a 6'4". He's probably at least that. It might be 6'8". I have no idea, but he's like just a really funny, interesting, complicated guy. And he brings all that to the character. Just sort of a bunch of pathos. You have no idea where it's coming from, but there's something going on there. A lot of the party stuff was heavily improvised. We had some special effects shots where we were doing like fire, so we had to do a lot of safety things and whatnot. But a lot, like we had a couple B-boys that were doing like amazing stuff, and then at one point Jeff's character gets ready to do it and like throws out his back. So it was just a lot of because it really felt like a party, even though there was playback and all the typical way. That it really felt like a party. And we had a great casting and a great group of comic actors, so it was just kind of like we were able to just make up gags on the fly, and people just, had a blast with it.
Now, before we move on and begin discussing other versions of the website, I wanted to ask Joe exactly how this site was made. Now, while he admitted he doesn't know all that much about Flash programming, he could at least tell us his own experience and what it was like as the creative director, especially coming at it from a filmmaker's angle.
I have my background, my camera's locked, my person can act like a theater. My person can walk back and forth in my locked world and do whatever they want to do. And I've got to exit them in order to do anything else. So they have to exit. And then I can blur zoom into any space I want to and out in any space I want. So that was sort of the structure of how we cheated the fact that we didn't have motion capture capability at the time, and motion cameras that we could have done it with motion cameras, would have been a lot smoother, or with game engines like now the stuff you can do with Unity and the stuff that I'm doing now with game engines is a lot cleaner. So that was those were sort of like the basic building blocks. And then I know they used Flash, Photoshop, Illustrator, Flash was how we moved about the cabin and how things became live and clickable, and how we were able to play back audio, play back TV, TV content, move around the Esperanto. They had Esperanto magnets on the fridge. So it's, of course they speak Esperanto, of course. So they could slide them around, or all that stuff was really largely done with Flash. So video, Flash, Photoshop, Illustrator, and now you've got the limit of my technical knowledge.
So now we have a pretty good understanding of what this very first version of the website was like, but what about these other chapters in the extended Caveman universe?
So they said, well, this is great. We think we could do a lot with this. Let's, what else you got? I said, we've got to throw the party. We've set up all this anticipation, and the site's just about getting ready for a party. We've got to throw the party. So the site experience was the party's already happened. So it's like, he greets to the door with trash bags, like, woo! I need to drink some water, that sort of stuff. He's home, and and everything's trashed, and I came up with the idea of like leaving hints in terms of storylines all throughout the wreckage of the party. So there's cell phones, notes, voicemail messages, things that you could click on that tell individual character stories. So Jeff's story was he was dating this beautiful statuesque blonde, and it's just like he's got a relationship going, and it was very, very, very sweet. And like John's character, his girl wasn't there, and he was kind of like, sort of sad sack. And then Eric Andre, who was an emerging comic at the time, I didn't even know him, but I auditioned him and I was like, this guy's great. I wanted to introduce a younger bartender because my goal with this, by the way, was to create a franchise beyond, digital.
Guys, I've been thinking, I could really go for some mayonnaise.
Absolutely, ladies. Heck yes.
Joe's Mayo. Ask for it by name.
In the dairy section. I'm lactose intolerant, actually, so.
I think it gives you tapeworms.
Really? That explains a lot.
Now we'll explain the direction that Joe wanted to take the Caveman franchise in a bit, but we still have 2 other chapters of this website to discover. Joe explained to me that advertising executives, as one would imagine, are very risk-averse people, which is why Hollywood is churning out sequels and reboots like nobody's business. Well, actually, I guess it's their business. That's the business. Instead of creating totally new content and going in new creative directions, they basically said to Joe, hey, you know that party thing you did? That was good. Do more of that. So then what does Joe decide to do?
We'll do a Halloween party. And it's like, these guys are gonna have the hottest chicks ever, and they're gonna be like the most cliche Halloween, witch and a sexy angel and all that kind of stuff. And we'll bring in we'll replace the DJ setup with the harpsichord, and so I had to like kind of imagine new storylines, kind of modify everything. There's like a raven in a cage, in the living room and stuff, and again, it's like choose your own adventure to no avail. Like there's no there to any of this stuff. You don't get a badge if you do everything. It was just strictly immersing yourself in branded entertainment. And people loved that. People loved it. I mean, it's the metrics are bananas. And, I was just like, I can't believe I'm getting to do this.
Caveman's Crib really was an amazingly popular site. I mean, there really wasn't much like it on the internet at the time. It was a highly produced point-and-click adventure that you could access for free on your internet browser. The last version of Caveman's Crib was a total transformation. It became a dating website called I Heart Cavemen.
I'm ready for someone different, someone new, someone rugged, handsome,
not pretty.
So we made the I Heart Cavemen dating site. So we, and basically you're logging on to John's character's profile, and it has the dates, videotaped, and it has all these and he is, Jeff's outstanding actor in his own right. John is like an improvisational, that's his thing. So we shot on one of the city, the New York City streets at Paramount, and that was where all the dates took place, and the way the site worked. So this was when digital was starting to really get sort of morph into social. This was probably 2008, around the time that I left GEICO to come to the agency, because you were able to morph yourself with a caveman and see what your cave baby would look like. So then we built all the things from those 3 experiences and just rolled them out like year after year after year. It was incredible.
While it's almost impossible to find any remnants of I Heart Cavemen on the internet, I'll share a video of John Lehr's caveman character Marty trying to pick up YouTube star iJustine at a South by Southwest event hosted by GEICO for women in tech. If you're unfamiliar, iJustine was incredibly popular at the time and still has a big online presence, although I haven't heard her name in years. You'll notice that this video was taken from an ancient video website, and there are like these comments that pop up at the bottom. I tried to turn them off, but I couldn't figure out how, so enjoy some user comments from 2008.
Austin parties till late. I don't know if you want to... I have a lot of money. I'm very successful.
I can type really fast.
Oh, really? Look at all this. Look at all the cameras behind us. You like to be... They all love the Caveman.
I think they love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
You do?
I do.
Oh my God, I'm Marty. I'm Marty.
I'm Justine.
Justine.
Yes.
You have a warm hand, warm heart.
You're kind of chilly.
I am. It's the only part of me that's chilly, believe me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's a little unsettling.
I mean, it's very warm. I have a lot of hair, and I'm wearing a sweater vest.
That is a great sweater. Where
Do you like it?
I do.
I have a young lady who picks stuff out for me. Not somebody I'm connected to. Absolutely.
Have you ever used an iPhone before?
No, I barely go on the internet. I know how to get to iHeart Caveman, and that's it.
Well, you should get to that.
Yeah, it is.
I know.
Listen, I don't know if I've rented a convertible. I'm going to go for a little spin around Texas tomorrow if you'd like. Between the two of us. All right, shall we? Yeah.
By the beginning of 2008, while Cavemen's Crib was at the height of its popularity, the TV sitcom Cavemen aired, bombed, and was canceled. And so
I ended up directing the Super Bowl ad where the cavemen dissed their own TV show. Yeah, so it was a little uncomfortable, I have to admit, because it was kind of like Steve's like, "You've had your fun," He didn't say anything, but you could just sort of tell he was kind of like, okay, kid, and that.
Now, before we part ways with Joe Talbott, I wanted to circle back to what we talked about before about his handling of the Cavemen franchise. Now, if it was up to Joe, how would he have handled the Cavemen cinematic universe?
Getting to spend as much time as I did with Jeff, John, and Eric, who are not only really talented guys, but also really funny and creative, and who really dove into these characters that we built to built from the spots to have all this depth. We couldn't help but think, like, what's next? What's beyond? And so we started riffing on this idea that one of their I think it's Jeff's uncle or grandfather or somebody has passed away in like Reno or whatever, and they're all traveling back together, like a boys' trip to go back and pay homage to him or whatever, and just starting in LA or New York or wherever, and then just like the whole sort of cross-country road trip of these three guys. I mean, it's already funny without even like putting anything to it. So it's really just a question of like when all of our schedules come together to make it happen, because the script's practically already there. It's just and there's so much improvisation that happens with these guys. You don't have to have so much of a script, quite frankly.
While I love Joe's optimism, his desire to get the gang back together and, make this caveman road trip movie, I gotta be honest. If there's one thing I've learned from this experience, it's that the special effects makeup and prosthetics that the caveman actors wore constitutes a form of psychological torture that would make Henry Kissinger blush.
Look, don't call me.
Okay, that's pretty direct. Did not go well.
I heart Caveman. You okay?
Yeah, that was a roughie.
You ever consider asking somebody out that you know and like?
I hit all the hot clubs. I'm just not into the whole meat market scene,
Yeah, I understand. Hey, I just wanted to let you know that it's my last day here. I'm moving back home.
What?
Yeah, I've had it with this town. You're the only nice guy I've met since I've been here.
Oh, well, thanks.
Well, have a good life.
How does a caveman in today's world get to meet somebody like that? I guess I may never know. All right.
Wow, and so that brings our story of the GEICO Cavemen to a close. If you like the video, then like the video. If you like the content on this channel and you'd like to see more in the future, then don't forget to hit subscribe and ring that bell. And if you really, really want to support the channel and make me very happy, then please check out my Patreon. It is in the description below. Again, we are so close to reaching that very first milestone of 10 Patreon members, and I would love it if you would be one of the first supporters. That would be so, so awesome. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Hey, Future Dev Null here. I'd like to thank all my patrons, past and present, as you can see on screen, but a very special shout out to the patrons who have stuck around through this long hiatus, etc., etc. My name is Kier, not sure how to pronounce that one, so please DM me on Patreon or Twitter if I got that totally wrong. Possum Yawn, Quinton Reviews, and Tentacle Teapot. By the way, I'm thinking about starting up a weekly live stream soon where I react to commercial compilations from the 90s and early 2000s and do some real-time research live on stream. So if you watch this far into the video, that sounds like something you might be interested in. So be sure to sub and hit that bell for updates. Also, if you like documentaries about commercial mascots, check out my video, The Secret History of Pepsi Man, where I take a deep dive into the world of Japan's #1 soft drink superhero. And of course, thank you again for watching. If you've made it this far, you're a real one.